Welcome to Throws Podcast. Today we have incredible guest, Frantz Kruger, one of the best discus throwers of all time. He is bronze medalist from Sydney Olympics, and this is Olympics where it took 68 meters to win a medal. And he did really well right from the first throw, shaking up some legends out there, Riedel and Alekna, and he was only 25 years old. His best is 70-32. He threw this while competing for South Africa. But he also threw 69.97 while competing for Finland. So he's a Finnish record holder and South African record holder. Also, continent of Africa. This is still record. But what's most impressive for me in terms of his career, Frantz Kruger career, is not that he just threw that far and won all these medals, Olympic medalist, but also that he's still throwing. He's now into his fourth decade of throwing. So, guys, he threw in 90s, 2000s, 2010s, and 2020s. So he's still throwing. Last year he threw almost 60 meters, through 195 for those of you who are better in feet. So what he talks about in this podcast, what I was very curious about, is first of all how can you throw that far, right? And also how can you throw that far for that long? So he talks about his training and things that he's doing with his athletes now. He's a coach in Finland, also international coach. He coaches online as well. He talks about technique and the reason why he threw that far when he was that young, and why some youngsters are throwing as far as he did, as well, for not needing to be very strong, but emphasizing technique a lot. So he's really technical, and he believes that's the way to throw far, not just one time, but also for many, many years as he is doing that. And we discuss some of the limitations of human body. Really interesting theory that he has about how far humans can throw in each event. So check that out. Really interesting point of view. So for all of you, those coaches out there who are coaching young athletes or you are coaching yourself, this podcast will be really helpful for you to get a sense of what kind of injuries in terms of technical stuff that you need to do to avoid injuries, and how to train properly and train for a long time. And obviously, Frantz Kruger, he's one of our legends, one of our idols in terms of longevity. He's still, like I said, throwing. So we had a good conversation about people in the past, and he's still throwing with some of the best ones out there and throwing really far. So, Frantz, thank you so much for your time. Guys and girls, enjoy this interview. Take some notes, because this is one of the best advices that you can get at any time, especially early in your career, is how to train properly to be able to throw really far and for a really long time with least amount of injuries. So take some notes and enjoy the podcast with Frantz Kruger.
It's -6 outside. I was just outside, so I have some.
Oh man, that's one thing we can talk about. How did you adjust from South Africa to Finland to finish cold?
Yeah, it wasn't easy. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, Frantz Kruger, Olympic medalist, one of the few guys who threw over 70 meters. Thank you, Frantz, for so much for your time. I don't want to take too much of your time, but we are delighted to speak to you shortly about all your successes and what you're doing now. I had a good friend talked about you the other day. We talked about you the other day and how envious we are of you still throwing, right? So this is 2000 medalist, and you're still competing. And we chatted a little bit on the call. Your story is amazing. Your whole career and what you're doing now. But tell us, Frantz, how did you get into throwing discus in the first place? Why not rugby or something like that?
Well, I was playing rugby for a long time. Actually, I was playing up until I was about 18, and it was a big choice actually. But at that point, I was doing so many different things that the discus throwing was good, but it wasn't great until the point when we got an old thrower came to our school, our high school, and he was the coach there, Johan de Toy, and that kind of gave me that inspiration. And I think maybe 2 years after he got there, I won the World Junior Championship. So that was quite a quick rise, and never looked back from there.
How old were you when you started throwing?
I was about, we never threw discus before we went to high school in South Africa. So I was probably around 13, 14 when I started.
Okay.
Playing around, doing everything, shot put, discus, hammer, javelin, everything. And then when Johan came, then I kind of focused on the one. And
Okay.
I guess it was a good choice.
What was your javelin best? How'd that go?
I was
Because
throwing
you're
the
in
javelin.
Finland now, the land of javelin. So.
Yeah, I can't say I was a good javelin thrower. No, I was. I don't know. I was throwing it on a horizontal plane. Everything is moving in this plane, so throwing the javelin on the side, out the side. So it was never really that good. But we all did it, and all had to do it. So it's part of being in school.
Okay, so that's one thing I would say that lacks in US is kind of selection to kind of see what you're best at. I know Germany does a great job, in some countries about doing all the sports, all different events, and kind of see what you're best at. I heard, I don't know, a story about Lars Riedel, that he was the decathlete, or he tried before he started discus full time. Is that something that's normal in South Africa, or it was just unique for your coach or your high school?
I think what's unique in South Africa is the fact that we have this system where all the school kids compete in all the events at some point to kind of go through a qualification round, because we have this in the school. We divide the school into different houses or different groups according to surname. At least we did it in my high school, and then all the kids went around and did all the events, so that we knew basically then who can do anything. I was doing we were running 800 meters, we were running sprints, we were doing long jump. So you went through this period when everybody was doing everything, and that's kind of how I actually started throwing discus, because when I went to high school, I was basically first year in high school. So what is that, junior in America? And we as the juniors, we had to do all the dirty work. So we were tasked to throw or to get the discuses back when the seniors were throwing. And after a while, we clever guys, we started to think, but it's much easier to throw it back than to carry it back. And I was then throwing further than the seniors. When we were throwing it back, I was throwing it further than the seniors. So the teacher said, "Listen, we need to have a chat. You need to come and train after school."
Okay.
So that's how that started.
Yeah. That's I think it was All Order. No, it was one of the coaches, one of the videos. He said he will get his 10,000 throws by throwing back after he would throw. So that you were getting your 10,000 throws already, didn't you?
Yeah, started early. Now, I think that system works quite well, especially to identify talent. But then, of course, now these days there's been a big push, and of course, rugby is a professional sport, and I think you have maybe the same issue in the States, where you have football and basketball. It's the same size and the same type of guys that do both, so it becomes a competition now, especially for talent.
Yeah. Well, no. So you're luckily you stayed in track. 2000 Olympics. People say the 2000 Olympics was the best kind of Olympics, organization-wise. Obviously, great results. How did that feel? Just being it was your first Olympics, right? And you win a medal. How'd that feel? Yeah.
Well, it was kind of surreal. I was also that was, let's say, 99, 2000, 2001. I was kind of in very, very good shape, and I was 25 years old, so I didn't have any choice than to be in good shape after all the training. And I could stand on my head and throw 65. So it was kind of easy in that sense, because it give you a little bit of confidence going into the competition. And of course, I knew all the throwers, so it wasn't that big a deal. And maybe it was a good thing that it was the first competition. I didn't know what to expect, or first Olympics, didn't know what to expect. And walking in there, big eyes. You don't know who's who. If you didn't know who's who, I think then it would have been a little bit more difficult. But I think at that point I've already then competed against most of the guys, and especially I think me and Jason were chatting away, not really focusing on the actual throwing. So I think that helped a lot as well.
Okay, yeah. Get your mind off the competition. That's remarkable, because I remember watching as a kid, watching on TV, and obviously Alekna was huge already in terms of who's going to win, right? Chances of winning, Alekna and Riedel.
Yep.
And you had your Jürgen Schultz, you had Kapchuk and those guys, Dubrovcik. But I remember after your throw, everybody's like, "What just happened? 68 meters? Like, who's this kid?" But they always knew about you. But that was enormous. And I remember you were just like, "Yeah, go." Must have felt great. Full stadium like that.
It was actually just before I went to Sydney. I had some exams I needed to write at school, at the university, and so I couldn't be there. We tried to get the whole team there about 2 weeks before the competition, just to acclimatize.
Yeah.
So I couldn't get there, and what we then did is I actually changed my time to Sydney time while I was in South Africa. So I had my training sessions in the morning very early and very late at night, and then sleeping through the day, these type of things. And we organized a small competition in Bloemfontein where I was studying, and I actually threw a 69.75 just before we left, maybe a day or two before I left. So I was kind of in good shape, and then I basically surprised myself when I was in the qualifying round, the first throw of 67 meters, and that was, nobody was expecting that, not even the South Africans. So it was, let you say, a big surprise for me also. So it was, I knew I was in good shape, and I think I actually surprised a bunch of guys in the competition as well. So that I think that definitely helped me. But then it was a tough competition. It was a tight competition. It was those years. I think it was very similar to today. Everybody was very close. People were throwing 60, 69, 68, 67 all the time. Not too many 70s though, those years, but it was definitely all getting close. But you needed to be in shape to actually do anything. And I think in that competition, it was, I think for those years, it was maybe the best competition ever, the highest level competition.
68 plus, yeah.
Very, very close, yeah. It was good.
No, it was amazing. And we talked about a little bit how generations come. And you threw, obviously now we have young kids, quote unquote, young men, whose fathers you threw with, right? So Alekna, the younger now, he's throwing far, and you threw with throwers from 80s, right? Someone like Jürgen Schultz, right? He was an 80 thrower. You threw with those guys, and you threw with your generation, obviously Alekna, Riedel, you, and now young generation, you throw with them. You threw at the meet with Czech and Stahl.
Yeah.
So your span is of generations, about 50, 60 years of discus throwing. How do you see discus changing, or what are some things that you noticed over the years? Because you were out there at that top, and now kids are, I call them kids, but they're young men throwing really far as well.
Yeah, I think it's well, if we look at how the technique has changed, there's a lot more. Even if I compare it to the guys that were throwing 96 Olympics, if you think Ubartas, if you think There were a lot of guys there that you could see they were very strong, but the technique was maybe not 100%. And I think that has changed in the sense that the techniques have gotten better. They've gotten a lot more efficient. Of course, with that, myself being a technician, I was never very strong, so I had to rely on a fast arm and trying to be as efficient as possible. And I think that's the thing that's getting better over the years. If you think somebody like Mikolas Alekna, when he's throwing, first time I showed it to a friend of mine, he said, but that guy knows how he's controlling his body. He has his body in control all through the throw. That type of thing is now, it's coming more to the fore. It's not that there's not that many power throws, even though the guys are quite strong these days. But I think the techniques have improved a lot.
Yeah. Like Robert Harting is the last non-reverser. You were non-reversed, right? There were so many people who non-reversed. Cap to Jürgen Schultz. All right. Do you think that's because of reverse efficiency, or just people are more, like you said, they're not trying to get powerful as they are?
No, I think it's a question of I have a lot of theories, and there's a lot of ways that I'm thinking about the sport, and over the years. But I think if you think, when you throw discus, it's all about the speed of delivery. So at that point that the discus leaves your hand, there's three facets you need to look at. The one is the height of delivery. So of course a tall guy is going to have a better chance there. If you think of the angle of delivery, that is then according to what the wind conditions are, how low you're throwing. But then the biggest component there is then the speed of delivery. And over the years we've seen that there are certain speeds that would give you a certain distance, in zero conditions. So zero wind, zero effect from external point of view. Then, so if you want to throw 70 meters, there's a speed you need to throw. And I think guys are now realizing that, the amount of power you need is to be able to handle that speed. And I think that's becoming more and more coming to the fore, that, the speed at that point of delivery is becoming more consistent in throwers. When I was throwing, I never threw very hard in training. When we were in competition, we would throw hard. But then it was also one day on, one day off, one day on, one day off. But these days it's a lot more consistent. And I think guys are realizing that, when you generate the speed through the circle, it's much easier and it's much more consistent than what we were doing when it was trying to throw from a non-reverse. I think that's the big thing is also that it's easier to generate that speed in a reverse throw.
Yeah. No, and then for that you don't have to be, I guess, as strong, right? You don't have to have amazing stand throws like yourself, over 60 meters. People train their whole life to throw over 60, and Harting, I'm sure he was able to. I know Lars Riedel was famous for his stand throws. So I guess that's different approach. But I will say, for somebody who's a power, I guess you're not as powerful, but non-reverser, you're still throwing, right? You're still throwing successfully. You almost hit 60 meters last year. I think it was 59 or 2 years ago before COVID. What do you think? How did you avoid, or did you? So obviously throwing, the big thing is injury in every sport. How did you avoid that, or how are you still able to throw?
I think in one sense you need to be a little bit crazy to still be doing it. But then I think also when I was throwing, I was never the strongest. I was never the guy that would be training the hardest in the gym. My success, I think, came from throwing a lot and throwing a lot of implements, so very specific type of strength. But then also I had a background in swimming. I had a background in a lot of sports, rugby, cricket, a lot of type of things that I was doing when I was younger. So I think I had quite a good base. And then also, I spent a lot of time on recovery. Not just not training, but then also thinking, playing other sports like I played squash a lot. To get the general movements and general mobility, always kept that up. Was swimming once a week. These type of things kept the shoulders loose and kept things going. But then, why am I still throwing? I think there was a time when I was not throwing. Officially, I retired in 2010, and then afterwards,
The first time.
for the first time, yeah. And I didn't do anything for about 6 years. And then there was a girl here in Finland that came to ask me if I would coach her. And then while I was coaching her, and you always need to show something, to demonstrate how things are working. And,
Do a drill, yeah, do a drill.
exactly. And I found that I could still do it. And one day she said, "Why don't you throw?" So I said, "Okay, well, let me throw and we'll see what happens." And
Yeah.
had a 50-meter throw, and I thought, well, maybe I can still do this. And that was the
Yeah.
first year. Then I came back, competed in the Finnish championships, got a silver medal, and then after that, it's been gold medals ever since. But now I'm waiting for the next guy to take over from me, because can't be like this that the old boy is
Yeah.
winning.
Yeah, we talked about this a little bit too. It's incredible. You are record holder, still African record holder. And you are record holder for Finland too, almost 70 meters as well. I think 69, 97, yeah, right?
Yep.
Just
Yep.
under. What do you think? Some countries have better luck with young men and young women coming into this sport. What do you think needs to be done for this sport to make it more interesting? To have new blood, as they say, right?
Yeah, it's a difficult question, because it's a sport where you don't get the results immediately. You need to spend time, and it's not something that you master immediately. So I don't know. We've been thinking a lot of throwing on the beach. I think they did it once in Belgium or somewhere. They were throwing on the beach, throwing into a wind. Here in Finland, we throw indoors. And I think there's also a big culture in Finland, especially around athletics, and people know athletics, and people understand the sport, and kids start quite early here. So it's a there's almost a family feeling
Yeah.
around athletics, and of course, then on the other hand, we don't really have the big sports. Of course, there are guys that are playing American football and rugby, but the sports aren't that big. So then those guys are then channeled towards athletics a little bit more. So we have shot put, we have the discus, of course, we have the javelin throwers. That also makes it a lot.
Yeah.
Gives some I don't want to say
Attention,
credibility, but it gives some visibility to the sport, at least. And that I think it pulls the people in.
And I mean, we do have amazing young men and women coming in. Records are being thrown. All right, 70 meters is going down. Javelin, you have Johannes Feta throwing 96. Shot put is amazing. Now, in terms of coaching, what would you be, for those who are throwing, what are some things that you've noticed in yourself or athletes that you coach now that are very important? You said doing other stuff than just throwing, doing other muscles, other sports. What is something that you teach your athletes now that is different?
I think for me, a big thing, especially in Finland, there's also a big because of course Finnish people are quite strong naturally, and they've been doing quite well in weightlifting. They've been doing quite well in strongman competitions. So there is definitely a streak in them in most of the Scandinavian countries, and of course the guys that have been throwing javelin on, they've proven that too. But for me, it's always been to get the technique down first, So we do a lot of
Okay.
drills. We do a lot of
Not
things.
bench pressing 200 kilos, no.
Sorry.
Not bench pressing 200 kilos first.
No, not first. No. For me, it's been to get the technique down first, because at the end of the day, it's much easier to get stronger than to fix the technique. And that's the type of thing that I try to teach the kids that I'm coaching. But then also, I think it's very important to do other things. To run a lot, to jump a lot, to try and develop the general mobility, because at some point you are going to need it, especially in throwing discus. The idea is that you run over the circle. It's not just a turn or a spin.
Yeah.
That type of thing.
It's not just arm. You don't just throw with the arm. It's the whole body, right?
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
I don't.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's almost like a dance. And there's one thrower that said discus throwers are best dancers. I don't know if that's true for you as well.
Well, if you can say discus throwing is a dance, then I do it well, but I don't dance any other styles so much. I try, but not so well.
Yeah. No, it's a skill, right? So because you have to spin around, you got to go around the circle, you jump a little bit, but then you hit it with the whole body, right? So it's a really athletic move. Are there any exercises or something specific that you attribute to your success? You talk about throwing. How many number of throws? What was important for you that you knew? Okay, this season I'm ready because I did, I don't know, this many number of throws, or I lifted this much.
I think it was more about a feeling for me. When I was throwing, we did a lot of throws, yes, but not as much as maybe I know Gert Kanter was throwing quite a lot, and there was a lot said about how many throws he was throwing and how many throws he threw over 70 in training. And for me, it was more a feeling of the rhythm. If I could feel the rhythm, if I could feel that they were smooth, and that was more important for me. I was also throwing a lot of implements, different implements, heavy bars, 3 kilogram bar. We were throwing 4 kilogram shots. And then from standing throw, of course, and then later on, in the season, then we would go to the 2.5 kilo for standings, full turns. South African drills were very important for me. And then, of course, at the end of getting closer to the season, then it was also very important to go to the lighter distance. And, was throwing those quite a lot, but there was always about the rhythm, always keeping the rhythm, and also medicine balls to a certain extent were quite important, but that was more for the general type of conditioning, to get the general type of conditioning ready. And but I think if I have to attribute my success to something, I think it was maybe throwing very heavy weights from standing, because of course that was my technique that needed that, and that I think was my secret. And then of course the rhythm, the double throw, always trying to get this double throw, this orbit that
What do you mean by that? Yeah,
that Mac Wilkins is talking about. There's an orbit. So coming out the back of the circle, throwing a discus, catching it, and then throwing again. That was very important for me.
Yeah.
Still is, actually.
I remember you were like Harting, one of the quote unquote slowest starters, right? So you guys don't go fast out of the back. But man, when you catch up at the end, that whip is so powerful. So that's what you're talking about, the rhythm. So you would time yourself well.
Yeah. I think if you look at what Ryan Krauser is doing these days, it's very similar. Very, very similar type of rhythm that he has than what I was throwing with. I recognize that. And it comes down to the fact that you have control always. So there's always an element of control coming out the back, being in balance, and then driving forward. Because if you kind of off balance, then of course you're losing energy, losing applicable power there. So that was the big thing. Mhm.
No, that's who's when you look at the rhythm, who are some of your favorite throwers in terms of technique?
Mm, Alekna,
Like these
both of them.
days or back in the days?
Well, Alekna, both of
Yeah,
them.
both of them. Yeah, 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 yeah.
It just always seemed so easy. It seemed so smooth and easy. Um, Funny enough, Fasekas always fascinated me because I could never understand how he could handle that speed. He was very, very fast. But then, of course, also then, okay, Gert Kanter, he was quite
Oh,
good as a technician, and Harting, Robert Harting was,
oh yeah.
there's a lot of guys that I say, if you really want to see how hard he works on the left side to get that, get into the circle in balance, then he's one of the guys you need to
Yeah.
check. But I think also from a technical point of view, I've also told a lot of kids that if they want to model themselves, then Mac Wilkins and Wolfgang Schmidt. Those are the two.
Oh yes, Wolfgang Schmidt.
Those
Yeah,
are the two that I like. Yeah. Mm.
yeah, yeah. No, I for Wolfgang, I remember stories about him starting as a little kid, just doing drills in the ring. Right, his parents was his dad would draw exactly where the feet needs to be because his technique looks so smooth. Back in 70s already. So yeah, definitely Wolfgang. He's actually in Florida now.
Okay.
I'm yet to meet him. I met Mel Wilkins. I trained with Mel Wilkins for about 6 months, but I never met Wolfgang. Have you met Wolfgang? Have you
No,
threw with
no,
him?
no.
Because it was too
No,
early.
no,
Yeah,
no. I
it was
missed.
too
I
early.
missed him. I missed him. I
Miss
got
him,
Jurgen.
yeah.
I got Jurgen. I didn't see. I didn't
You
meet
gotta get.
Wolfgang. Yeah. No, I think there was a
And what do
video
you
of him.
think?
There was a famous
Mhm.
video of him
Go ahead.
throwing in the, I think, 1976 European Championships. There was some coaching video, and in this video, the guy was talking, and that's when I recognized this orbit and this double throw, and how the path of the discus needs to go. And it was kind of like
Yeah.
a light bulb going on. I said, "Shit, this is how it should be done." And that's that. I think that was also a big influence on me.
Yeah. Because you had that what we talk about high orbit, you and Cantor. You were looking for that. So it's very, very physical, or yeah, physics, very physics, right? Biomechanical, correct. So that's also what you talk about, feeling, getting the discus light. How heavy was discus when you released it? Is it heavy? Is it light when you know it's a good throw? How does it feel?
It feels fast. I think some of the best throws I never felt. But then there's been some really bad throws that when you really pull on it and you really pull, then you feel it in the finger. But the ones that are 70-meter throw, that was very easy, very, very easy.
Yeah. Did you feel like, oh my God, I can throw even more now?
It's actually quite funny. In that competition, there was a very strong wind in the beginning of the competition, and then as the competition is hour long, so after a while, then the wind died down, became cold. There's videos where I can show that in the beginning of the competition, we all had shorts on, and we all had we were throwing, and the wind was everywhere. And then the last throw, everybody had long tights on and jackets and everything. So it was quite a big change. And but that was one of those days when you kind of feel like, okay, things are going to happen today. The wind was blowing, but I couldn't. I think I had maybe a 68 as into this big wind. But then the wind died down, and I think then you also get to a point where you kind of give yourself to, now the wind is gone. What do I do now?
Conditions.
So now I'm relaxed. Now there's no expectations, and then it happens. So it's quite a funny feeling in that sense. But
That's
like you say, it was an easy throw.
Yeah. It's amazing for me, for all discus throwers who are aspiring discus throwers, to see guys like you throw that far, but not just throw that far, but throw that far without wind. Right. So you didn't go to Chula Vista, you go Salinas, right? The
No.
weight helps obviously, but to be able to throw 68, 69, right, 70 in the closed stadiums or no wind, that's so powerful. And when I watch you guys do that, it just looks amazing. But like you said, it looks effortless for you. So what do you think it's limit of human abilities, right? So there's a lot of generations, there are different generations now throwing far, flirting with 70, 71, 72s, only two guys, 73, well, three guys over 73. What do you think? Is there such a thing as human limit? Or how far do you think world record can go?
No, I think it was in the World Championships this year. I was looking and I was chatting with Robert Weir, and I have this theory that I think that there are limits to what the human can do. Of course, it depends also. Of course, the throws depend a lot on on the wind conditions, if it's hot, if it's cold. But then also you need to think what is really possible for a clean athlete. And I thought that if we think shot put, I think maybe 23 is that limit to a certain degree. If you think hammer throw, maybe 81, 82 is maybe that limit. Javelin throw, 90 meters more or less. Of course, you get the outliers that go over that. But I think that's maybe the limit where everything ends. And then for discus throw, it's around 70 meters. But I think that that's the limit for us. But because if you think over the years, that's always been the big mark, the 70-meter mark. Everybody's been chasing that ever since maybe, let's say 96, 97. Everybody's been chasing that mark. And but the difference is that I think the in the last few years, it's just that there's been many more guys that have been getting closer to that mark. So the competition is getting tighter. You don't have the guy that throws 70 and everybody else is throwing 68. Now you have 3, 4, 5 guys that are very close together and could win any competition at the time. I think that's something we need to
but not
check
like
and maybe
3, 4 guys
investigate. Exactly. Mm-hmm.
And on the women's side now, you think about the same, about 70, because it looks like we have Valerie now, you have Sandra, about 70 meters as well. Now you threw famously 1K discus really far. Was it 90 plus 95? What was it?
Yeah, we were in training camp in Portugal.
How did it come about?
And myself and Tero Pitkämäki, the javelin thrower. This was maybe 2008, 2009, and we were sitting at breakfast, and he said, "Oh, he needs to throw his javelin today, and he's going to go for 90 meters." I said, "Okay, I'll challenge you. Let's see who gets closest to 90." And he says, "Yeah, you can't throw 2 kilos." I said, "No, I'll throw 1 kilo discus, and you throw your javelin, and we'll see how close we can get." And luckily there was some media there around taking videos and some promotional pictures. And, so we in the training session, I said, "Okay, well, give me that 1 kilo. Let's see how far it goes." But funny enough, I actually saw now on social media, was it yesterday, that Mikolas took a 1K and tried to throw that as well. There was somebody that said there was a guess how far that went. So I would be interested to see how far he threw that, because I think also Jürgen Schult at some point he got close to 80, 82, 83 meters with a 1K.
Yeah,
but
it's hard
of course
to hit.
I don't know if it's very hard, very
hard.
It needs some speed, and I think Valerie is actually doing quite well. And I think if you really want to model technique, then I think she's the one to do that at the moment. I don't think there's anybody with a better technique at the moment.
On the women's side, and then men's side, you would say probably Mikolas or.
Yeah. Of course, the discus size is a big has a big effect
different technique
on the mechanics, right? and how it goes. Yeah, but I think those are quite good. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you? So you mentioned you were throwing heavy stuff, 3K. You threw pipes. Did you peak for the right? Obviously, for the right meet, World Championships, Olympic Games, with throwing less and lighter, or how did you peak? How did you get ready for the big meet?
It was quite difficult in the early days in South Africa because we had a South African season, which would then be having our national championships in April, and then break down again and then go into Europe. So a lot of the throwing with the heavier implements was done, let's say May, June, but then also in September, October, when we started training. But then, of course, it was we did a lot of throwing with the heavier stuff early. The peaking would always be it would taper down for sure over the season. And I think this is maybe one thing where my coach taught me a lot of things was, how to taper, how to get things ready, how to get yourself ready into it when you really need to be ready. And I think we hit it many times. We hit it on the mark, but of course there was one or two times where we were maybe a week early or a week late. But the thing is, 4 to 6 weeks before a major competition, then you definitely need to start going quicker and start throwing lighter, and maybe even though there is a balance, you need to always keep the balance between throwing heavy to keep the technique right, because that's also the other thing is it's not always we don't always do the throw the heavy implements just for power throwing, to get the muscles ready to throw a big throw, but also to adjust technique, to work on certain issues in the technique. Because of course, if you have a heavier implement in your hand, it's much easier to get the legs around. So you get a better separation. These type of things also work into it. But so those are all elements that we needed to take into account. But 4 to 6 weeks, when you're in a competition cycle, definitely then need to start looking into doing things faster and doing things much better from a speed perspective.
Yeah. What's if you would throw a 2.5, 3K disc? You didn't throw a 3K discus. You would say you go 2.5. What's the what would be conversion between 2.5 and 2 for you?
Conversion meaning?
So like Malachowski, Fyodor Malachowski, he would throw. He said if I throw over 60 with 2.5, I know I can go over 70. So for him, will be 10-meter difference.
Yeah. For me, it was more a question of my standing throws. So if I would throw a 60 with a standing throw, then I know I'm in 70-meter shape.
Wow. Yeah.
There was always that 10-meter difference there. Then the other thing is if I was going to be throwing 2.5 kilogram pipe, or like a stick, or a bar, depending on where you are. I know the Germans talk about sticks, talk about bars, but I think that one was the one that if I could get around 55 with a standing, or not with a standing, but with a like a half turn, South African turn, then I knew I was in shape. Those were the kind of the KPIs I had. They were quite strange, but like I said, in training, never threw really very hard. If I ever went over 60 in training with full turns, then it was very rare. But sometimes I did get some good throws out. I knew, okay, now we're on. But 2.5 kilo disc is very difficult in that sense, because it is much slower than usual. But from a power perspective, I think from my standing throws, I could measure it out. Maybe let's say 50 on a stand with the 2.5. That was maybe the threshold for me.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's I mean, you are a power thrower, right? What they call in America power throw, they mean not reverse, right? So you're a power thrower. That means that you have to have a good stand throw. What's really impressive, and I think important for, we have a lot of a young audience, a lot of coaches listening, especially young coaches who are maybe not discus throwers. They were not discus throwers, but they were throwers. It's important to note that you didn't throw far in practices, right? So you have all these kids that put the measuring tapes, right, and they're practicing with the measuring tape to see how far they're throwing. But you say you never chased those big marks in practice, but you still Olympic medalist, one of the best of all time, 70 meters. So how would you explain that? So obviously you don't need to throw far in practice, right? Was it something that came from your coach or from you? How did you fought that urge to throw far in practice?
No, I think maybe also to take things into perspective is when I was throwing, each training session we would start with standing throws and then go to South African drills, and then at the end we would do the full turns. By the time I got to the full turns, my arm was so tired from throwing all the other things from the stand throws that I didn't really put in that much effort into those throws. But one thing that was very important for us was to make sure that the technique was correct. When we were doing the full turns, and one thing that we did was we would do target practice. So I would take a towel out and put it maybe 55, between 55 and 60 meters, and then in the full turn I would then try and throw that target as many times as possible. And the reason for that, I would then focus on training this 80% intensity, and getting that right, and then perfecting the technique around that, so that when you're in a competition, then you can just go out full out and blast, and don't have to think about don't have to think about the technique or anything like that.
Oh, I think that's. I wish I had my coach tell me that, because like most of us, we would chase those big throws in practice, and then you come to meet, and then you throw much less, and you're very disappointed, right? So like, I practice, I hit this, and warm up, I hit this. But I think what is important to note what you were doing is you're getting that power from the stand throws, right? So you're developing that strength, developing that power, and then making sure that when you go on a full technique, it lines up. So I think that's a really, really good. It's hard approach, but that's a really good approach. That stand throw is very important.
It is. Yeah, it is tough, and even in the athletes that I'm coaching at the moment, it's very difficult for them to not put in a full, full effort in a full turn. And that's when you make the mistakes. You either pull yourself down because you want to throw far, you let it go because you're going too fast at the end and not bringing the hip through. But then again, if you then have this target, then you don't have to put in that much effort to get it there. Then you can concentrate on doing the things right, and there's less risk of screwing it up. When you get it done. And that's the thing is, when I was growing up, the way I would learn things was by doing it over and over and over and over. The repetitions was there. I can remember there was times because my first coach, the discus throwing coach, he was still throwing himself, and what we would do is some afternoons we would go from school to where his coach was coaching him and some other throwers. And what I would then do is then watch what they were doing, and he'd tell me, okay, this is what you need to concentrate on today. So right next to the circle where they were throwing, I would go into a circle and I would be doing one drill for the whole hour. Only one drill.
Wow.
And that was it for the day. That was what I would need to do. And he would come every now and then, come and check if it's working and if it's right. And that was the way that I learned, to use my hip. That was the way I learned to turn around the left foot in the back of the circle. That's how I learned to, do the stand throw and push through and get everything the way that it is. And those are the type of things, if you get it down first time, you have it for the rest of your life. Maybe that's why I can still throw, because those things are so imprinted that you can't forget it.
No, very, very important. I think to listen to this and write it down for our audience, how efficient you were, right? So you hear these stories about Ryan Krauser, his parents having him do drills, right? When he was young, Wolfgang Schmidt, right? He's doing the drills, a lot of drills. So what you're saying is it's really important to establish that technique, even without throwing. And then when the implement comes, you would know what to do, and you'll be actually more effective with it. So your advice is to be a little patient at the beginning and do drills.
Of course, yeah. No, you need to do the drills, and that's what I said in the earlier. It's also is that it's hard to sell a sport where you need to work hard for a long time before you can actually see any improvement or any results.
Yeah.
But if you are crazy enough to put in the work, then it's going to pay off in the end. That's for sure.
I think it's an incredible sport. One of the few that you can really travel the world and have friends from all over the place, especially now that we are more connected with social media, with internet. We're talking, you're in Finland now, so you're 10 hours. And for some reason, you get up at 4 a.m. This is amazing. That's why you're champ, right? You have your routine. But now, the sport is the world wide. Like you said, people from all over the world. You go to Australia, you have friends. You have throwers. You go to South Africa, you're always from there. And you have Wolfgang Schmidt, people in America, Mac Wilskins. So I think for young throwers now, that's important to note. Like, hey, you can see the world. You'll have friends from all the world, and we all appreciate the struggle. We all know how hard it is. So when I talk to you, I'm like, oh man, you did this, right? Because I know how hard it is, right? So I think that's one of the selling points we have here in the US as well, that we're doing with athletes. Like, hey, it's not just get a scholarship, or you're gonna go to a certain championships, but you were gonna travel the world. And what is one of your favorite meets? Because you threw everywhere, and you threw everywhere far. What are some favorite places you threw at?
Favorite places, I think, Zurich. Weltklasse in Zurich was always the favorite place. They had a German corner, and the discus throw was in that German corner. Because of course Lars Riedel was always throwing there. So his supporters always were sitting in that one corner, and I think I went to that competition probably maybe 8 or 9 times in succession, and of course also I threw some big distances there. Sometimes I was forced to throw quite big. We had some quite quite tough qualification standards in South Africa. So I think at the ones I think for Sydney Olympics, I had to break the African record to actually qualify. I had a window, and that was the window. Zurich was in that window, so that was quite good. That I could do it there.
Oh, you threw far everywhere. In France, in Finland, in Africa. You didn't have to come to certain meets. You threw everywhere far, which is very, very impressive too. But that's the thing, right? Like you don't have to throw as far, guys. You don't have to throw as far as Frantz Kruger here to travel the world. You can throw 60 meters too. There are a lot of meets, but you were there during Golden League, right? So you threw at the Golden League meet, which is now Diamond Leagues. Was that stressful? How did you manage? I have only a couple more questions before I let you go. Did you manage to have? You mentioned season in South Africa, which was obviously started early. Go through all these European meets and stay at a high level for so many months. How did you stay in shape that long?
Well, of course, we were always looking at the Americans and how they would do that, but my training was very much based on the old East German way of training. So there was a lot of volume at the beginning of the season, and then you basically build up a type of let's say like a bank, some savings of you build up some form, and then through the season we would then very much just rely on trying to keep that form, but then also a lot of the periodization was basically set on a double peak for the season. So the first peak would then be early in April, and then we would break down a little bit and then go into like a mini winter type of training. So heavy throws, heavy weights, and then as soon as the season then started, then it would basically fan out, and they would keep this what do we call it? The maintenance training. So not too much, not too not too little, but just to try and keep a form through the season, because this is something that I saw many of the shot putters, especially guys like there's a few guys that were throwing when I was in throwing in the Golden League, and they would be at a high level all the time. It was quite interesting to see how they were training. It was more a question of this maintenance of your mesocycles and your microcycles, and how you manage to keep the cycle running within a very short time. So within a week, you would basically go from having a heavy session early in the week, to light session and late in the week. So those small ripples in the form, that type of stuff is very interesting to play with, especially now also because body is getting older and it's a little bit more sensitive to these changes. So it's quite interesting to do these experiments these days also.
Well, you are a scientist, I would say, of this sport. You're a student of this sport. You're throwing so long. I'm saying that in a good way, right? You've been throwing for so long.
No, I'm still going to go on, so don't worry.
And that's the thing, right? I told Jason yesterday, I'm like, Jason, guess when Frantz is going to retire? He's like, let me guess, never. I'm like, you're pretty much right. You're pretty much right. So, well, that's impressive that you're going to continue. And I hope you mentioned you want to throw, your goal would be to throw far with a 1.5 when you change categories, right?
Yeah, it's a few years to come, yeah. Let's see. The world record I think is 68 at the moment, so that's something. Okay. That's a goal.
Well, Jason and I, like I said, we'll live vicariously through you. So we wish you the best. But also for the end, Frantz, like I said, just one more question. So you're coaching, you've been throwing. What are some advice and things that you stress with your young athletes, with your athletes that you have now? That are very important. You mentioned technique and drills. What is something that you would suggest athletes starting, coaches and parents, and athletes who are looking to get into the sport for those first 2-3 years? Okay.
I think it's very important not to try and do it alone. I think it's very good to have friends around you, people to train with. I think that's the most important thing. And then of course, be patient. That I think is very important thing, just to keep going, because yes, there is this 10,000 steps or 10,000 repetitions you need to go through to become a master in something, but it's not a straight line. It's steps. You go a step and then you're stuck for a while, and then you get a step, and then you're stuck for a while, and then you get a step, and that takes a lot of patience to get through those steps. So if there's anybody out there that get a teammate, be part of a team, get a coach that that you can enjoy the sport with. I think that's very important, just to enjoy what you're doing. Don't be hung up with distances, don't be hung up with with measurements and these types of things. It's not important until the competition day. And it helps with the enjoyment. But there needs to be, and like you said, this camaraderie that we have. This is where that starts. You have friends. You might only have friends in your training team. Then after that, you have friends at the next meet. Two cities down the road. And later on, you have friends across the world. Those type of things. This is how that starts. And we enjoy the sports. We're brothers in arms. We've struggled together. We've gone through a lot of things, and I think that's what's keeping the community alive. I think that's the great thing.
No, and you couldn't have said it best. Especially these days, you can get a coach now and buddies online, right? So you're coaching. I know you're coaching remotely to a couple of athletes. So I do encourage anybody who wants to reach out to Frantz here. You are an encyclopedia of knowledge of this sport, and it's great what you're doing for. And not many people do that after their career, or during their career too, to give back, right? And you're giving back, you're teaching back, and you don't have to, but I think that's really really important for the sport that you're doing that, and I know a couple other athletes. So thank you for that. So Frantz, thank you so much for your time. I know it's the beginning of the day over there. I don't want to take too much of your day, and we'll and I can stop this and record. We'll post this on our social media. We'll post it on our YouTube as well. But yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time. And I really hope you throw that world record. I know Jason and I will have a little beer watching wherever that is, and you can come to California too. We'll be watching from the stands.
Yeah, I might need to make a trip down to California to come and do that there. Let's see. Yeah.